Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for hanging around to the end of the day and end of the first day here. Definitely get it's a lot of information to process, but hopefully you've seen some good talks here. I really like Kajana's talk earlier, just coming from someone who has done a lot of consulting at clients where they have these big architectures in place. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know, architecture or astronaut stuff at a lot of clients out there. So I really appreciate that talk. And then Moral's talk was really good too. I love just the accent too. You know, the documentas. That's great. Also that pink shirt, man. That's bold. I love that. I was actually going to. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I have this really awesome. I heard one woo. That's good. I was going to wear this awesome Star Trek shirt to give my presentation, but my wife was like, "You're already doing like this really silly, goofy, slides and everything. If I come up here wearing, some Star Trek shirt, then might not bode well for continuing working on Raven." So anyway, I'm dressed a little nicer.
You need to come using a Star Wars.
Star Wars? Oh man, that's blasphemy. No. Okay, so anyway, one of the big items with the new with Raven 3.0 is the new studio. And this is something I've been working on for quite a while. I'm pretty proud of it. And the big news item, of course, is we've gotten rid of Silverlight. We're off of plugins. And instead, we've decided to use HTML5, which I think is a good pick. So what I want to do, this is going to be a shorter session. I've just got like half an hour allotted. But what I want to do is just explain briefly why we did that, and then just kind of give you a tour of the new studio. Just have a look around and see how things are in the new studio. So, so the first bit. Yeah, I am. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. So one of the main reasons, of course, that we've moved off is plugins in general are in decline. How many of you guys remember Java applets? Okay, everyone. How many of you guys enjoy going to a site with Java applets? Pretty much no one. Oh, this guy, come on now. That's a Microsoft guy, come on. So I think very few. And just as Java applets have kind of died out on the web, we're also seeing that same phenomenon with Flash, where in the age of mobile, in the age of tablets and so forth, we don't need plugins like we once did. I think plugins served a purpose. They kind of filled in the gaps when HTML was young and still didn't have the power to build real applications, maybe rich documents and so forth. But that age has passed, and HTML5 is really powerful enough to do everything we want to do, including building rich web apps, which is exactly what we want the studio to be. So I can remember several months ago, we were talking about what should we do for Raven 3.0 on the user group there. And I was really pushing Oren to say, to give me the thumbs up on building an HTML5 studio, because it seemed to me to be the right pick. And so I remember that day, he's like, okay, you can do it. I was like, yes. I like left my work. I was at 3M at the time. I'm like, I'm just signing out for the day. I'm going to go home and start building this thing. So I was really stoked that we got to do this. I think it's the right decision, not only because Silverlight itself is dying, but also because really this was like one of the biggest bits of feedback we heard from you guys in the Raven community. This was like a highly requested thing of, hey, we need to do an HTML5 Studio, or we need to at least get off of Silverlight, do something different, maybe a Windows app, maybe WPF or something. And we discussed some of those options, but eventually we decided to go to HTML5, and I think that's the right decision. I don't know about you guys, but when I've pitched Raven to folks, I'm involved in a lot of user groups and code camps and that sort of thing. And when I've done talks on Raven, even though the studio is just the UI, it's not the core of the product, it is what people see. It's like one of the first things they see. You know, you bring it up, oh, here I can interact with things. And for a lot of folks, when I would do that, I would show them Raven, and I would, you know, bring open the studio and kind of show them around. There would be raised eyebrows when they saw it was Silverlight. And I think a lot of that comes from perhaps some, I don't know, anti-Microsoft sentiment that's out there. But also just because plugins are dying, it wasn't the right platform for us going forward. And so, you know, we want to remove the barriers to Raven adoption. And I think having it in Silverlight, having the studio, the main tool that you interact with the database in Silverlight, I think was a hindrance, at least for some. And so to me, I think this is a great option going forward. Of course, some of the nice things that we get being off of Silverlight is we have some nice cross-platform story. You know, most of us now have tablets, probably an iPad, something like that. You can totally use the studio from those things now. And many of us have Macs. Even though Silverlight did sort of run on the Mac, you had to install stuff, right? You had to like download the plugin. And I think to get a Mac person to install a web plugin from Microsoft is just some horrible, horrible thing no one wants to ever admit to. So I think it was a right decision for us then to move off of Silverlight. We gained some, not only do we remove that barrier of adoption, but we also have more platform opportunities. You don't have to be on Windows to use the studio. So I think that's a net win. The other thing is, and this kind of goes up against the other options that we had for building the studio. We could have built a Windows app. We could have done WPF or WinForms. But it seems to me that the web is really the way of the future. I've heard something that the web always wins. The web ended up kind of supplanting Windows apps such that there isn't a whole lot of need for Windows apps. And I suspect that's going to happen on mobile too. We're just not at that stage yet. So I really do believe that the web always will win. And I think it really speaks to the longevity of HTML and the web, that you can go to. You guys remember the movie Space Jam? Anybody remember that? Yeah? A few of you? OK. Right, Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, all that. This animated movie from, I don't know, like the mid or late 90s, I think. They have a website, and it's still actually up today. But you can go to the Space Jam site, and the website will still work. I think that's an impressive feat, maybe a small little thing in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that the web from so long ago still works is significant. And I think that is a great base to build Raven's tooling on. I think in 5-10 years, you will still be able to run the studio in HTML5, whereas that might not be the case if we had stayed on Silverlight, or maybe it would be more difficult. You had to install a lot of components and so forth. So I think it is the right choice to go to HTML5, and I'm pretty happy with the decision to do that. So what I would like to do is I want to just go over, kind of give you a tour of the new studio. You guys have already seen it. I know some of you guys have downloaded it. Some of the speakers have already run it a little bit. But I just want to kind of go through some of the basics, show you the new studio, and also highlight some of the net wins that I think we get by going to HTML5. All right. By the way, I find it really amusing. This place is definitely tailored for talks. Like, I think this is like if you're getting sweaty up here or something. I know in the men's bathroom I saw they have like deodorant in there. I've never seen that before. I thought that was really weird. I was at 3M a few years ago. Well, even up till recently, but about 2 years ago, 3M decided they wanted to spend a lot of money on this enterprisey project. Microsoft got wind of that, and so they sent down this speaker who, I don't know, he was like a salesman more than anything. And he tried to pitch us this multi-million-dollar top-down solution using everything from Silverlight to BizTalk to SQL Server to Stream Insight to all this stuff. And the reason I bring it up is he could have used something like that. He was pitching this all to us, and he was, I don't know, a bigger guy, and he's pitching it in front of all these 3M executives and the developer team. I was there with them. And he is just dripping sweat like nonstop. I mean, he's holding up his hand and water's coming off his arm. It was really nasty. So anyway, he could have used that. So, okay, so let me, this is just the source I've pulled down. Let me project this in a moment. Oops, I don't want to do that. Already running it. Okay. Let's just do that. It's a little simpler. Okay. So you guys have seen the new studio. The first thing that you're going to notice is it's not a huge departure visually from the old Silverlight studio, and that's deliberate because of a problem that Scott Hanselman describes as "who moved my cheese?" If you move the cheese enough, the mice get angry, and I think if we had like totally rearranged the UI on top of just moving technologies, I think it would kind of disrupt some workflows. So we've really tried to preserve, for the most part, the UI from the old studio, just rewriting the underlying technology and making a few tweaks along the way, which I'll highlight in a moment. So let me just, I'll show you a few things here. Actually, well, okay, we'll do this. Sweet, someone just retweeted me, awesome. Okay, so let's do HTML5, awesome. Studio DB with a misspelling, great. Okay, and we'll go ahead and just go to that new database we created. We'll go to tasks, and we will create some sample data. Great, sample data was created. We'll hop over to documents for that, and there is all the data that we just created. So the studio as it exists right now in the download bits for 3.0 Unstable, which was released today, I think it's quite functional. We're missing some pieces, as Oren said earlier, but we'll be implementing those in the next week or two, I think. So, so anyway, there's a lot that you can do, certainly a lot that you can play with. I'd like to highlight a few things now with the new studio, just show you some of the benefits, highlight some of the benefits of moving to HTML5. What do we actually get for that? So if I can hop back over to presentation. So one of the things that I think is quite nice about HTML5 is it tends to be faster than just plugins. Why is that? Some of you guys, especially the developers, you guys might know a guy named Raymond Chen, a blogger for Microsoft. He's big on like low-level stuff. He wrote a blog post once where he said, people always ask me, how can I make my program run faster? And he said it's simple. You just do less stuff. And I think that's the case with HTML5. We're doing less stuff, especially at initialization time. With Silverlight, we had to fire up the CLR core or whatever it was called. We would have to download the .NET framework, our .NET libraries. We'd have to load up the existing .NET framework into the CLR and start executing code. And all that is just like overhead that really we don't need. And I think one other speed benefit that we get with this is browsers continue to get faster. You guys always see like performance benchmarks between Firefox, Chrome, IE. You guys have seen that, right? All that stuff. What they're always trying to get faster at is executing JavaScript and showing stuff in HTML faster. Faster rendering, faster JavaScript execution time, and so forth. And so it's like a constant speed battle to improve the performance of the native web. Well, that's good news for us now, because in Raven Studio 3, with HTML5 and JavaScript, we are reaping the benefits of all those performance gains as JavaScript executes faster, as rendering times get faster and faster. That's just all net wins for us. That means that the studio gets faster and faster. So I think that's a net win. And even just on startup, if I can show, we'll just do a little eyeball comparison here a moment. Now granted, we're running locally, and I'm not a salesman, so I will be totally honest with you. Running the studio remotely, we have a performance problem, and that's because we have a lot of chatty scripts coming back. That's something I'll be addressing soon. But locally, we can kind of just eyeball local Silverlight to local HTML, and you can see kind of the initialization and just get a sense for some things there. Okay, so let's off to the end. Great. So you can see just loading the studio, I mean, it comes up quite fast. We grab all the databases and some stats about those databases. And if you compare it to, let's see, localhost 777, and this is the Silverlight one. And let's just go back to databases so we're comparing apples to apples. Freeze. Did you guys see that? There's like kind of a pause just initializing things. I've even had it sometimes where like, and maybe you guys have seen this too, but where Silverlight will freeze up or will like eat a lot of CPU, and Chrome will report, oh, there's this long-running script or something, and you have to kill the Silverlight plugin process. Again, we're just doing less stuff at initialization, which I think is a net win. So you're going to see speed, not just in startup time, but you're going to also see some speed improvements just using the studio. Again, because HTML5 and JavaScript is what browsers do best. So we might as well leverage that. Oh, wow, okay, we have some of the Raven FS people. Awesome. You know, one time I was in Israel for some training with hibernating rhinos, and it was awesome. I'd never seen anyone do this. Allende's, he's doing something, and he's teaching us about Raven, going through the whole spiel, and partway through, he's like, oh, that's a bug. Hold on one second. And then like live, as we're all sitting there, a bunch of us, he's like, hold on, I'm just fixing this 1 second. Okay, save, push, done, fix the bug right on stage. I was like, ooh, that's really awesome. Okay, so faster startup. Okay, I will tell her. I am live at RavenConf. You are on screen. Say hi. Yeah, and recorded. Awesome. Goodbye. Not as good as fixing a bug live, but it's something. A lighter footprint. Again, we're doing less stuff, loading less stuff. We're not loading the core CLR, the .NET Framework libraries, our own .NET DLLs. And so we're going to see quite a bit lower memory footprint, which again is good. Maybe you fire up a couple studios, maybe one for your development, another for production. Or maybe you just have some tabs open, like, hey, this is my documents for this one, this is indexes for another database. Having a lighter memory footprint is a net win for those situations, especially those of us that are either devs or operations people, where maybe we've got a lot of tools already running. You know, maybe you got Visual Studio running, maybe some virtual machines and so forth. So just to kind of show you that very quickly. So let me, let's do this. Let's go over here and say, Task Manager, I hope this works. Good, it's on screen this time. Sweet, it looks very nice. Thank you, MJ1856. Okay, so a couple things. Actually, let's go ahead and just kill some of the Silverlight stuff. We'll just kind of go to 0. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and fire up the HTML5 Studio. And let's just very quickly, we're on databases. And you can see we're using about 25 megs of memory according to Chrome, which I think is pretty accurate. That's pretty good, I think. Jessica. That's pretty good. In fact, I was just comparing it to some things around the web just for fun. And so I was like, okay, how much memory do we load when, say, we go to like Allende's blog? And I was looking at that, and actually, it's like 40, so almost double for his own blog. Yeah, so I was like, hey, I'm feeling good about that. And then I said, okay, how about of course, the old Silverlight Studio? So let's have a look at that. We'll do.
That's actually news to me.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Cool. All right. Sweet. Okay. So let's go to, and we'll do. Silverlight Studio. And let's look at this. So the first thing is, you might say, oh, it's only 18? That's not too bad. But then what you see down here is kind of a sadder story. It's like, ooh, that's 80. And as you load things, this isn't just at startup, guys. This is kind of like multiplies across as you use the studio. You'll see that memory usage, by and large, is much lower in the HTML5 Studio. Why? Again, we're just doing less stuff. So I think that's a net win going to HTML5. Okay. Snappier performance. I really like this too. Just moving around in the studio, you're going to find to be a better experience. Have any of you guys gone into the studio and you have a collection with a lot of documents in it, and you scroll, I don't know, to the bottom really quick or something, and like the whole grid kind of legs along with you, and like even the track isn't following your cursor? We've really tried to address that in the HTML5 Studio to keep things snappy. And even for the grid one, we made some deliberate choices there where it's like, you know what? Let's just keep the scrolling really, really snappy and let the rendering catch up as we slow down or as we stop. And so I think it's just a snappier performance all around. So I'll just show you a few things here. Okay. So we just did this guy. And you can see that, you know, if I say, hey, go right to the bottom, see how it's kind of staying with my cursor even as I just jump around? I think that's just kind of indicative of the whole studio. We just have better, snappier performance. As you're moving around between views even, it's just like, bam, it's right there. Whereas, I don't know, sometimes in the old studio, we had some problems, like, say I wanted to, like, I don't know, and it's like, give me 10 minutes while this comes up. So we definitely had some. I just did a Control-Shift-N to select all to the end of the list. And yeah, it kind of, I'm sure all of you guys have seen stuff like this, right? Where maybe you're just dealing with a large collection and and I don't know, the drawing can't keep up, or Silverlight freaks out. Sometimes when I've done this before and I'm like trying to copy a bunch of documents, eventually you get to the point where you see something quite nasty. Please raise your hand if you've seen this. And that is any of you guys seen this? Yeah, okay, good. So I've seen that, I think a lot of us have, where we kind of throw Silverlight for a loop. Or sometimes it's not even the fault of the studio. To be frank, I feel like plugins on the web are kind of hacky to begin with. What you're trying to do is like put something totally foreign to the web, and that only runs on certain machines, onto a web page and trying to make it seem normal. But of course it never is normal, and anyone who has actually used like a Java applet or a site built entirely in Flash knows what I'm talking about. Keyboard shortcuts suddenly stop working. In fact, even with the studio, I showed this some time ago, but like, I'm a big keyboard shortcut guy, and any of you that use browsers, you know, like Control-T opens a new tab, right? So if I did that, Control-T, oh, it did work there.
Because the studio is
Oh yeah, there we go, okay. Yeah, so I was focused off of the studio, but now that I'm in the studio, I hit Control-T, it's now opening a tab. Why? Because Silverlight's eating it. And that's just kind of indicative of the larger set of problems that plugins, I don't know, leak out to the browser. So again, just being a native web app feels good. Not only is it good for the future of Raven, you know, especially if we want to get outside of our niche. I think we have a nice niche where it's like, hey, we are a great NoSQL database for .NET. And we have this awesome link provider, and it's second to none. That's great, but if we want to move beyond that and let Raven spread its wings a little bit, I think we need to move off of plugins, especially dying ones like Silverlight that Microsoft has frankly cut the air supply to. Okay, so let me show you a few more things. As I said, this is kind of a shorter talk, but just wanted to give you a tour of the studio. Streamlined UX. I mentioned earlier before that we've really tried to preserve a lot of the UI that we've you know, kind of built up a workflow through in the old studio. You're used to clicking a database and going to documents, all that. So we've really preserved a lot of that. But at the same time, I think that we had an opportunity to make some small changes that I think just feel a little more natural and maybe not so, I don't know, so hacky on the web. Some examples I would give are, notice when you first come into the old Silverlight studio and you want to go to a database. Why am I not going to a database? Oh, well, it's kind of that hidden feature of double-clicking things. Double-clicking is fine in some cases, but it's not all that common on the native web. You don't see it very often. So things like this, and I know this is small, but this is kind of polish. Things like this, instead of saying, oh, well, you double-click to go to that database, we just do things that feel quite natural on the web. For example, links, a wonderful thing. I can just click that link and it takes me right to it. A few other things we've done like that. I feel like the old studio had a lot of hidden interactions like that, where maybe you would be like, well, I select some things and then I right-click on them and then I do this other functionality. Not that right-click's bad, but it shouldn't be the only means of interacting with something because it is kind of hidden. And also, again, like double-click, it's not all that common on the web. We've still done right-click, but we've always given, in the new studio, we give you more visible options to do something. Like in the old studio, maybe you wanted to select 5 documents and delete them. You could click them in the grid. We'll hop over there. Right? I could click them here and it's like, oh, it's not selecting multiple. Oh yeah, right, okay, I can do like the control click or like the shift click. Oops, that took me right there. So you kind of had, I don't know, some maybe hidden functionality in that sense. And then you would be like, well, I can right-click them and delete. Okay. Or I could, do it through the keyboard too. And those are all fine options, but I think it is good to be a little more visible, especially for people that are just starting out. Again, demoing the studio to people, demoing Raven to people, we need to put on a good impression. And the studio being kind of that first thing people see, I think it's a good idea for us to make things simpler, if possible. So one thing we've done then in the studio is we have this kind of check selection, if you guys can see that. And I think that's quite natural for everyone who has used a web app. If you've ever used Gmail or anything like that, you're familiar with that. We can still do keyboard-based selection. So like I could hold the Shift key and click down here, and it selects everything in between. So we still preserve that, but I think it's maybe just a little more natural, a little cleaner. I don't know, maybe a little nicer. So again, it's small, but it's some polish. Also, if I can, let's see here. Okay. Also, one thing that we would do in the old studios, you'd be like, okay, I really want to go to that document. We would hover over it, and you could shift-click and edit in line. That's not bad. Or you could like double-click, again, you could double-click to go to that document. I thought this was a good opportunity to, again, just use what's available to us on the web, just nice hyperlinks, stuff that everyone is familiar with. So you'll see in the HTML5 Studio, instead of like double-clicking to go to a document or shift-click to edit in line, all that, I can just click here and it'll take me right to that document. So I think that's nice. So we have a lot of polish like that throughout the studio. That's really something I've aimed for. Kind of simplify the interactions. Nothing's drastic. After all, we are pulling out the technology under the hood. Let's kind of keep your workflow, but still do some nice things. So I hope you guys like that. OK. Stable and crash-free. I kind of already alluded to this, but you guys have often seen, as you guys raised your hand, that you would see Silverlight crash Chrome or your browser, whatever. Or maybe you would, even worse, it would like freeze it up and you had to kill the whole browser, not just that tab. This is kind of I don't know, like a difference of philosophy between web applications and Windows applications, which I kind of include plugins in that. And that is, on the web, you kind of just keep going. You don't have, it's not too often that you see like Gmail say, catastrophic failure, must close, Win32 error, bam, everything's gone. You don't see that sort of thing because I think web apps lend themselves to more resiliency. And so I guarantee you're not going to see, of course, the plugin crashing stuff now. But just on a bigger scale, you're not going to see so much, I don't know, finicky behavior from the new studio. Just because I think the resiliency of web apps and really the philosophy, the approach of web apps, I think is superior to that of native apps and plugins. A few other things. Keyboard optimized. Keyboard is important, especially as this is a tool that's being used by you guys developers, operations people. You guys know how to use computers. People are really productive with keyboards, so I thought, you know what, let's really make sure that the studio works well from just from the keyboard. So I can, yes, you're welcome. So you'll notice, if I can zoom in, you'll notice that for all like the toolbar items, you're going to see this is what it does, and that is how you do it from the keyboard. And this is really intended to aid you just navigating around through the studio and getting stuff done quickly. It's not perfect. Again, I want to be totally honest with you. This isn't 100% on the keyboard. I'm going to keep nailing this until really we can just move around in the whole app without having to touch a mouse, if that's your thing. So yeah, anyway, let me just show you some, I don't know, let's do something. What did I have down here? Show query. Okay, I'm supposed to show you query. It says my 3 a.m. self. I was up last night. I always like to, I don't know, give the talk before I give the talk, you know what I mean? Like rehearse it a little bit. And so I went over this last night and I was like, yes, I need to show query for the keyboard shortcut. So we'll see what we do here. So what do we have? Documents by entity name. I'm going to hop down to, by the way, since I pulled this up, wasn't planning on talking about this, but that's one other thing that we did is we condensed some views. Like we had query, we had dynamic query as separate views, even though they were really essentially the same thing. In the old studio, you can see here, query, dynamic query. And hopefully Oren doesn't strangle me for that, but I think that is kind of a nice thing that we've condensed. You can see in the new studio, we have a single UI, maybe tweaked a little bit, but we can just do dynamic queries from there. So let's see, what do we want to do? Okay, so run the query. Yeah, let's do this. So let's do name Alfred's. I don't know, can we do star in there? I think we can. Yes, we can, sweet. So I just ran a nice little query using a keyboard shortcut. Add, we can do Alt-A to bring that up. And let's see, we have a sort by, so Alt-O. We can select a field, whatever we want. Alt-R to run that. There's only one, so I guess it doesn't matter much. But anyway, the general idea is you should be able to get around the studio without having to touch the mouse, if that's your thing. If you just keep your hands on the keyboard and you're productive through that. So as you guys use it, and please do, please give it a shot and let me know what you think. But I would appreciate if you run into problems where it's like, hey, you said keyboard shortcuts. I can't do this thing or that thing without using the mouse. Tell me. I will totally respond to that and get things worked into shape. Also, if you see bugs, of course, you know, that goes without saying. So yeah, anyway, so that's kind of a tour of the studio. Yes?
Can you show the reporter feature?
Sure. I saw that there is some bug with that at the moment.
Now?
No, on my, as I was getting on the plane, I saw there was that bug report, so.
It was fixed. That's
Fixed.
why I wanted to show it.
Sure. We can give this a try.
Query.
Yep. Okay. So what do we want to query here?
All the totals
Okay.
by employee,
Employee.
sum and value, sum total.
That's what you're looking for?
Yep.
Okay. Give that a run. It did indeed returned some items. That's good. And then we can, likewise, I think, yeah, we can navigate to those.
Ask that we know.
Sure, no, go ahead.
Your talk, I just wanted to have meetings. Post about specifically this feature. This is the dynamic aggregation that was talked about. This is what I talked with you about. This is an ON operation in general. So if you have a very large data set, then it's not so good. But if you have rarely occurring query or something like that, that's a very good option. Specifically about the studio, which is this talk, two things that haven't been mentioned and probably should. One is, oh yeah. So, feeling like a rock star. So a couple of things about the studio that haven't been mentioned. One of them that is really important is just the notion that everything in the studio now is something that you can click on and copy and work with just normally. If you want to now, you know, I want to search now for, I got all of those employees, I want to search for employee number 5. I don't have to work. I don't have to build that on every single screen. even more important, the entire system is HTML5, and the entire system is open. That means that the possibility for people to come in and contribute is much higher.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that too. I'll mention that, but basically, I think it's quite simple to contribute. And if we have just a few minutes, I wanted to maybe show a simple way to like add a view. How would you do that? It's quite simple. So if we have a little time, I'd like to show that. But yeah, what Oren was just saying, I think is really true because, you know, in the old studio, it'd be like, you know, I really wanted to select some text here. Whoops, I can't. But you know, and that's kind of like plugins leaking their nastiness out to the browser. The browser doesn't know how to select text in some opaque object out there. Whereas, you know, in the HTML5 Studio, of course, all that sort of thing would work. I could just say, grab that and just hit Control-C to copy it. Oh yeah, speaking of Control-C, we did something kind of nice. Again, just some small polish here. But you'll notice, again, some nastiness of the browser coming through Control-C. That's kind of sucks, right? Right. It's nothing that we can take care of. It's like, oh yeah, I can say don't ask me again. But it's funny. I have Raven databases on like 8 different servers, and I swear every time I go to it, I'm like, yes, remember, and it always prompts me. It's kind of amusing. HTML5, you'd think for all of its power. David asked me this. Yeah, he knows where I'm going with this. But he's like, hey, you know, with the new HTML5 Studio, surely the web is powerful enough to just access the clipboard, right? Just copy. And the amusing thing is in HTML5, it's so powerful, guys, that you can play Doom 3 in your web browser using just modern web technologies, but you can't access the clipboard. So what did we do here? Well, I think we did something a little nicer than this scary Silverlight prompt. No. Let's do, I'm going to select, I don't know, 6 documents here. And you'll notice a few things. First of all, I can just hover over that. Copy selected documents, Control-C, D to copy selected documents. So I can go ahead and do that, Control-C, D. And right away, you can see we just highlighted all that text for you. Again, keeping with the theme of keep your hands on the keyboard if you can, Control-C, Enter. What that will do is just use the browser's native copy. We don't have to do any scary prompts, so I can say Control-C, Enter to dismiss the dialog, and we just copied all those documents. I think it's kind of a clever little way to do things. There it all is. And likewise for copying IDs. There it's Control-C, I. And there's all the IDs, Control-C, Enter. So again, just kind of some nice polish, some nice way to get around the studio. So hope you guys like that. So Oren, well, before we do that, are there any questions about the studio, anything at all? Yes? Why Durandal? Because I was familiar with it. Fitzhawk, he was like, Judah, you're making a mistake here. We got to go Angular. That's the new sexy. I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't really know Angular that well, and I'm really familiar with Knockout, and Durandal, I know the creator of Durandal has had some interaction with hibernating rhinos.
He's one of the people who built the Silverlight Studio.
Wow, yeah, so Rob Eisenberg. That's amusing, I didn't even know that. So he's got this nice JavaScript HTML5 framework called Durandal that is for building apps like this, web apps like this. So that's what we used. Angular's, you know, it's another option we could have used. As someone who's not an expert in Angular, I can't tell you if that was the right decision until I know Angular better. So, yes.
Any plans to take?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, you gotta work through Oren for that. But I will say I happen to structure the code such that you certainly could do it. In fact, really all you need to do right now is you could go into this app URL class, And let's see. Notice this base URL thing here. Well, this should be used when serving the studio from the server app. But if you wanted to, you could comment that, and then this nice line here could just point us to some other server. And it does work. I actually tested this last night. One of the things I was going to do in this talk was just put a server up there that all of you could access and just go nuts on. But then the internet was going in and out, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I won't do that. But yeah, basically you can point the studio at a different URL, and it will work on the condition that the server has the access control header. It's just some configuration setting you put on that server. Yeah, so that is possible. Any other questions? David?
Comments on the roadmap with Durandal 2.0 coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with Durandal, Durandal 2.0 is out. Durandal 3 is coming. And he said, yeah, you know, I think we're going to get rid of the knockout binding stuff, and we're going to do our own. I'm cool with that. There are some ways to make that migration easier. But you know, we'll kind of see as it comes down the pipe. I'm a little skeptical that he can replace his whole binding system in a short period of time, but we'll see. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I'll definitely keep an ear to it and kind of keep the studio in a place that we could migrate easy to the new binding system if need be. Any other questions? Yes?
Are you doing SignalR for push notifications or Raven?
Yeah, we're doing the Raven Change API for where it exists. That is where Raven Core exposes the Change API. There are certain areas within Raven where we don't have access to, hey, something changed. In that case, and Fitzhawk really helped with this, so credit goes to him. But there we do polling. We say, oh, OK, so every so often we're going to poll the server for some changes on, I don't know, like the database page would be an example.
What is missing?
So like with the Changes API, we would get notifications and we wouldn't have to poll the server. Is that right, Fitzhawk? Yeah. And so some things like, I guess on the database page, I know is one example. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that evolves in time, but generally speaking, we're using the Changes API, not any SignalR stuff. Any other questions? Yes?
So is the entire studio pretty much a single page app?
It is a single page app, yep. We did also a lot of, I almost feel like there's a second app in there. The Raven FS guys, the girl who was talking to me on Skype, she's one of the folks doing the Raven FS stuff. They've integrated a lot of their stuff into the studio. I think, Oren, you demoed some of that earlier. Yeah. So basically, you can access it through here. You could create file systems like you would databases. But to answer your question, it is a single-page app. Yep, and that's really what Durandal is aimed at. The reason we went that route, at first, my initial direction with the studio was, well, let's just build a standard web page where each page is, a standard link and all that. But I know that there was a lot of complications in having the server basically act like MVC, right, and serve everything out like MVC would. So I like the direction of a single page app. We've done a lot of care to ensure that page links work as you expect, even with a single page app, because sometimes that often leaks through. So.
The faults of Silverlight,
Yeah.
specifically with OAuth and the API keys, is that those aren't persistent.
I haven't myself. We've had some contributions. I know some of the rest of the Raven guys have been contributing some stuff to the API keys and making sure OAuth works. Do you have anything to say on that, Fitzhawk? It's in the works, okay. Yeah. Yes?
What are the recommendations right now for coexisting Raven 2.5 and 3.0 for the next couple months?
what are the recommendations for coexisting?
And if I'm working on a project and it's, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, sure. We're doing a little Q&A here. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right, guys. I was going to show maybe adding a feature, but maybe we should just continue on.
Do that in the hackathon.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fine. So anyway, thanks guys for hanging around. I hope you enjoy.